President Moon Jae-in vows to work closely with Thailand in advanced technologies and new businesses following a summit with his Thai counterpart. Korea's retail project, Brand K, also makes its debut in Thailand. We have the latest on the first leg of Moon's trip to ASEAN nations.
China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi embarks on a three-day trip to North Korea for possible talks regarding a speculated visit by Kim Jong-un to China later this year.
On the 80th anniversary of the attack on Poland that started World War II, Germany's president apologizes to the Polish people, saying the victims of that conflict will never be forgotten.
And nearly half of the Korean population is forecast to be aged 65 years or older 5 decades from now. This, coupled with a falling population, adds to concerns that Korea's future economic growth is at risk. NEWSCENTER begins now.
Good evening and welcome to Arirang News Center, live from Seoul. I'm Han Daeun.
And I'm Noaram. Thank you for joining us this evening. We start with President Moon Jae-in, who is currently in Thailand for the first leg of his three-nation tour to Southeast Asia. Today, he delivered a keynote speech at a business forum focusing on ways the two countries can co-prosper through innovative growth and new technologies.
For more, let's connect to our Park Hee-jun, who's traveling with the president. Hee-jun, tell us more.
Right. President Moon attended the South Korea-Thailand Business Forum with Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha. It's the first time the leaders of the two countries have attended a business event together. The forum was attended by around 500 business reps, including executives from Korea's Samsung Electronics, Hyundai Motor Group, and POSCO International. At the event, President Moon pledged that the two countries will work together in the era of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. He says there will be a great synergy effect when the two countries combine their innovative capacities and technologies. President Moon also said they will work together to establish a fair global trade order, pointing out that open and free trade is what allowed Korea and Thailand to develop strong manufacturing sectors. Moon said the two will continue to strongly support a multilateral trade system. And while speaking about economic opportunities, the president pointed out that peace on the Korean Peninsula can open up new doors for business opportunities. He said he believes North Korea and the U.S. remain steadfast in their desire to maintain dialogue. He also expressed hopes for a third summit between the two sides. South Korea's Brand K also made its global debut in Bangkok today. Brand K is a collaboration of around 40 smaller-sized domestic firms that sell various products ranging from K-beauty to daily supplies. These companies that have been selected for their potential will be given the opportunity to expand their businesses abroad. And President Moon described the event as a chance to recognize the infinite potential of the two countries' economic cooperation. He says Thailand's culture and tourism industry, combined with Korea's Hallyu, will create mutual benefits.
Now, Hee-jun, before those events, President Moon sat down with the Thai Prime Minister. What did they discuss?
So cooperation on the Fourth Industrial Revolution was the key agenda also during the bilateral summit. Take a listen to the president.
첫째, 과학기술, 신산업 분야로 협력의 지평을 확대해 4차 산업혁명 시대를 함께 준비해 가기로 했습니다. 미래차, 로봇, 바이오 등 신산업 분야에서도 협력을 강화하기로 했습니다. 총리님이 4차 산업혁명에 대응해 적극 추진 중인 태국 4.0 정책과 우리의 혁신 성장 정책을 연계하여 혁신과 포용의 미래를 함께 만들어 나가기로 했습니다.
And other than that, South Korea and Thailand signed a General Security of Military Information Agreement, otherwise known as GSOMIA. President Moon says it will allow the two sides to coordinate closely on military and defense-related issues. And according to the Blue House spokesperson, the Prime Minister showed great admiration for Korea's 5G technology, the first in the world to be commercialized. He mentioned that he hopes to learn from Korea's 5G system. To that, President Moon said more MOUs in that sector could benefit both sides. So we could be seeing more exchanges on that front in the near future. That's all I have for you now.
Our Park Ki-jun in Bangkok for us tonight. Thank you. The National Assembly kicked off its 100-day regular session today. The rival parties have got a lot on their plate, from government audits to the deliberation of pending bills and next year's budget plan. However, ongoing political wrangling is casting a dark cloud over the parliamentary session. Our Kim Min-ji at the Parliament.
The National Assembly will be in full operation with the regular session kicking off Monday, but the rival parties are at loggerheads over many issues, so how much progress they'll make remains unclear.
It's worrisome that the final regular session of the 20th National Assembly will be tainted with political strife. The presidential office, the parties, and the National Assembly should bear in mind that when they play their roles and move toward national unity, this can become the kind of country we want to live in.
For now, the parties have agreed on a basic schedule for the 100-day session. First up will be policy speeches by the country's main political parties starting September 17th. That will be followed by a government interpellation session, and after that, the parliament will carry out an audit of government ministries and their affiliated agencies. There's a lot of uncertainty, though, given the ongoing political wrangling involving Justice Minister-nominee Cho Kuk. The hearing for the former senior presidential secretary was supposed to be on Monday and Tuesday, but it did not take place as rival parties were divided over the list of witnesses. In addition, Cho faces allegations involving his family about large investments in a private equity fund and his daughter receiving preferential academic treatment. Instead, the ruling party and Cho pushed ahead to hold a press conference where he could explain himself. On top of that, there are contentious reform bills that need to be dealt with, including one on election reform. Last week, a special parliamentary committee passed the bill that was put on fast track, despite objections from the main opposition party. The bill seeks to increase proportional representation, with parliamentary seats tied to the percentage of voters' support for parties. Such issues cast a dark cloud over pending bills related to people's livelihoods, as well as the government's $423 billion budget proposal for next year. Working together hasn't been the rival party's strong suit, and this time that's likely to become more apparent. The regular session is expected to get off to a slow start until rival parties find common ground that suits their political interests. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
The two-day confirmation hearing scheduled Monday for Justice Minister-nominee Cho Kuk has been canceled due to bipartisan disagreement in the panel selection process. Nominee Cho held a press conference at the National Assembly instead to address numerous allegations surrounding him and his family. Speaking at the impromptu press briefing, Cho apologized and vowed to provide a full explanation and said that he still hopes to fulfill his duty.
I apologize to the public for disappointing them, but I have been appointed by the President for the Justice Minister post, possibly because of my past experiences with social reform. If given the chance, I believe that I have to answer that call despite my limitations. I ask the public to provide me with that opportunity.
Rival parties are still at odds over Cho's qualifications, given the college admission scandal surrounding his daughter, as well as suspicions regarding an investment he made in a private equity fund. Conservative parties strongly condemned Cho and the ruling bloc, criticizing their decision to hold the press conference at the National Assembly, calling it an insult to Parliament and the public. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi is now in the North Korean capital for a three-day trip. As North Korea and China celebrate 70 years of diplomatic ties in October, there is speculation that Wang's trip could be to prepare for another summit between Kim Jong-un and Xi Jinping next month. Our Oh Jung-hee reports.
Will there be a sixth summit between North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and Chinese President Xi Jinping in October? That's a possibility now being widely looked at, with Beijing's top diplomat in Pyongyang for a three-day trip. China's foreign ministry announced last Friday that its foreign minister Wang Yi is visiting the north from September 2nd to the 4th at the invitation of North Korean Foreign Minister Lee Yong-ho. That was also confirmed by North Korea's state-run Korean Central News Agency the next day.
State Councilor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi's visit this time is to implement the consensus reached between our two countries and is an important follow-up step in advancing our bilateral relationship. During the visit, Wang will hold talks with Foreign Minister Lee Yong-ho.
Pyongyang and Beijing will celebrate 70th anniversary of diplomatic relations this year on October 6th. With only about a month to go, observers point to that date for a possible trip by Kim to Beijing. It would come at a time when Pyongyang-Washington nuclear negotiations have hit a snag, and high-level talks between U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Ri Yong-ho are unlikely to happen on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. While the North sees the need to deepen relations with China to up its leverage against the U.S., it's believed that China would want to cooperate with North Korea to increase its own influence amid a standoff with the U.S. over trade and the Hong Kong protests.
China is also willing to play a constructive role in achieving this and towards achieving denuclearization of the peninsula and the long-standing peace and stability of Northeast Asia.
The summit in October, if it happens, will be the sixth one between Kim Jong-un and Xi Jinping. Up until January this year, Kim has traveled to China 4 times, and in June, Xi visited the north. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
Speculations were high that North Korea and the U.S. would resume talks on a working level following the historic Kim-Trump handshake at the DMZ in June. But the North is showing no sign of a possible resumption of its denuclearization negotiations with the U.S. To get some clues on Pyongyang's motives and when the highly anticipated talks would resume, our Kan Young-woo sat down with former U.S. Special Representative for North Korea, Joseph Yoon.
Hello, Mr. Joseph Yoon. It's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for making time to do this interview with us today.
Of course, happy to be here.
So let's get right into the questions. Despite the Moon-Kim-Trump DMZ gathering in June, North Korea has been saying some pretty strong words towards South Korea and the US. Why do you think this is?
I think there is clearly the feeling in North Korea that they have quite a bit of leverage, bit of bargaining power. And they have the bomb. They also have a delivery mechanism, which is the missiles. So I would imagine they're feeling confident. Yet at the same time, despite these meetings, there have been no substantive easing on what they are concerned with most, which is sanctions. So this is why I think they're coming out aggressive vis-a-vis Washington, aggressive vis-a-vis Seoul, because they want to send a message. We're not getting what you guys promised.
The US says it's ready to talk when the North is ready. North Korea says it's ready for talks and even battles. Will the talks resume anytime soon?
I mean, right now, it really doesn't look like it's going to resume soon, but I have to believe that political interest of both Trump and Kim Jong-un point to the direction of resuming sooner rather than later. Remember, for Trump, he has an election coming up, re-election coming up next year. And so for him, North Korea is, for him, is a foreign policy victory. Kim Jong-un knows the political imperative of Trump, so he's going to try to get maximum leverage out of it.
So going further into what you were just saying, with next year's election in mind, Washington has probably a lot of what-ifs mapped out as far as North Korea's denuclearization process is concerned. What are the people over at the White House thinking?
There are clearly those who are very similar in thinking to Donald Trump, which is that North Korea stopped testing missiles, they've stopped testing nuclear devices, so we are in a decent place. But then there are those who I call true believers, people like Bolton, who say, but we've achieved nothing. There has been no denuclearization, not even a little bit. Rather, they have probably gotten bigger nuclear arsenal. And so I think there is a division, which is why you are hearing mixed messages from Washington.
All right, I think that about wraps it up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Yoon.
Okay, good to be here. Thank you.
The South Korean military is said to have started a project back in July to build homegrown stealth drones. A military source confirmed that they would be deployed in combat after the year 2030, once a budget for them is approved by a council under the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Meanwhile, an official with US Forces Korea did not confirm or deny reports that America plans to replace its F-16 fighter jets in Korea with F-35s. The F-35s also have stealth capability. The number of remains from the Korean War that have been recovered has dramatically increased thanks to the government's excavation project initiated this year. The projects have been carried on locations such as Arrowhead Ridge, the site of one of the war's fiercest battles, which is located inside the demilitarized zone. After a month-long hiatus, Seoul says the second half of the excavation project restarted today. Seoul's Defense Ministry said that 457 bone pieces were recovered in the 5 months leading up to July, more than double from the previous year. The ministry asked for the public's support and participation in collecting DNA samples to identify the remains so that they could be sent to their families. A recent study shows that Korea will be home to one of the world's oldest populations over the next few decades. South Korea has been plagued by a fertility crisis in recent years, adding to fears that Korea's future economic growth will be at risk. Our Seon Young has the details.
According to Statistics Korea on Monday, Korea's old-age population is expected to comprise 37% of the total population by the year 2045, becoming the oldest country in the world. The figure is set to rise even further, with elderly citizens expected to take up nearly half of the entire population by the year 2067. In its latest report, the statistics agency compiled its own data as well as that of the rest of the world based on the UN World Population Prospects, which was issued in June. According to population aging forecast, the number of people aged 65 and older would account for 46.5% of Korea's population, while those in the rest of the world is expected to hit 18.6% in the year of 2067. At the same time, Korea's working-age population is expected to shrink dramatically. As of 2019, there is little difference in the working-age population ratio between that of Korea and the rest of the world. However, the small gap is expected to turn into a wide gulf by the time the year 2067 rolls around. Korea's working-age population ratio is expected to plummet to 45.4% compared to 61.7% for the rest of the world. Chronically low fertility rates have been identified as the main cause for the aging population. The total fertility rate, the average number of children born per woman over a lifetime, was seen at merely 1.1 children in Korea between the years 2015 and 2020, compared to the global average of 2.47 children. This has translated into a greater financial burden for the working-age population in Korea to support the growing number of dependents, which include adolescents and senior citizens. The number of dependents supported per 100 people in the working-age population group here in Korea is expected to be double that of the global average by the year 2067. South Korea's low fertility rates could make these projections inevitably unless the government steps in to take decisive working actions. 서은경, Arirang News.
South Korea's Trade Ministry has discussed ways to respond to the escalating trade war between the United States and China. Concerns have grown after the world's two biggest economies imposed additional tariffs on each other just on Sunday. Our Hong Yu reports.
The U.S. has begun imposing its additional 15% tariffs on more than $125 billion of Chinese imports, including smart speakers, Bluetooth headphones, and footwear. In return, China has also begun imposing a 5% tariff on U.S. crude oil on Sunday, the first time U.S. oil has been targeted since the two countries began their trade war more than a year ago. Despite the two nations imposing tariffs on each other's goods, Washington and Beijing will continue their trade talks and will meet in September.
We are talking to China. The meeting is still on, as you know, in September. That hasn't changed. They haven't changed it. We haven't. We'll see what happens. But we can't allow China to rip us off anymore as a country.
Beijing has pressed Washington to call off the tariff increase, but said last week that trade talks were still being discussed between the two. The extra tariffs will further harm Washington-Beijing ties, already strained by U.S. freedom of navigation exercises near Chinese-occupied islands in the disputed South China Sea, and U.S. support for self-ruled and democratic Taiwan, which China claims as its own. The tit-for-tat tariff measures between the world's two economic superpowers is expected to have a minor impact on South Korean exports. However, the Seoul government is concerned that the escalating trade conflict could trigger a global economic recession and undercut export demand. In response, the South Korean Trade Ministry held a meeting to respond to future changes in external trade conditions in a proactive manner. The ministry added it will do its best to diversify Korea's export markets and bolster the competitiveness of domestic industries. Hong Yu, Arirang News.
This past Sunday, September 1st, marked the 80th anniversary of Germany's invasion of Poland, which started the Second World War. In a ceremony to mark the occasion, the German president apologized for his country's wartime atrocities in Poland, vowing to never forget the victims and their suffering. Our Trish Young has this report.
On Sunday, German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier commemorated the first victims of World War II in Wielun, the city in Poland that was bombed in a surprise attack by Germany, heralding the start of World War II. The German president asked for Poland's forgiveness, speaking in their language.
I bow to victims of the attack in Wielun. I pay tribute to the Polish victims of German tyranny, and I ask for forgiveness.
The war continued for 5 years, and Poland lost almost 1/5 of its population during that period, including 3 million Jewish people. The Polish president said the tragic moment carries a message for the world and not just for his country.
The world suffered this loss to learn a terrifying lesson, a lesson that cost tens of millions of human lives all over the world, a lesson that cost tens of millions of lives of ordinary people, civilians, people not involved in fighting, unarmed people, the biggest sacrifice in human history.
The Polish president described the German president's apology as a form of moral compensation and said facing difficult historical truth has the power to bring forgiveness and the power of building friendships. The German president asked again for forgiveness for atrocities committed by his country in Poland as he took part in the main event held in Poland's capital, Warsaw. U.S. President Donald Trump had originally been scheduled to take part in the event but canceled his visit due to Hurricane Dorian. Vice President Mike Pence attended instead and spoke on his behalf. He said the Polish people never lost hope and never gave in to despair. 최시영, Arirang News.
South Korea will extend the visa period of foreign workers employed in seasonal agricultural work from the current 3 months to 5 months. The Justice Ministry announced a plan today to revise the immigration law and create a new type of visa for seasonal workers. The new law will be implemented pending an approval at cabinet meeting in November. The government introduced measures to attract seasonal workers from abroad in 2015 in response to labor shortages at farming and fishing villages due to the aging population. Some 2,800 seasonal workers entered Korea in 2018. Kabaddi, Pencak Silat, Savate, Kurash. These are the names of martial arts disciplines which may be obscure to most people. They will be on display, though, at the Korean city of Chungju this week, alongside more well-known martial arts. Our Won Jung-hwan takes us there.
An attacking player is mumbling something under his breath. If you look closely, the player is saying out the name of the martial art, Kabaddi, to show the referee that he is exhaling and not holding his breath during his attack, which is part of the game's rulebook. Kabaddi is perhaps the ultimate game of cat and mouse. The attacker needs to tag out as many as players as possible and return to his own zone. The defenders have to keep their distance from the radar to avoid being tagged, but at the same time, be prepared to initiate a tackle and attempt to pin the radar down when he sprints for the middle line. Although it sounds like a game played at school playgrounds, the action is highly reminiscent of the game of rugby. And a South Korean player who is known as the sport's most valuable international athlete playing in the Indian League hopes the event can show people how fun it can be to watch Kabaddi.
There is a Kabaddi World Cup, but it is rarely broadcast on TV, so I hope people can become more familiar to this sport through these types of global competitions.
Also, an athlete who just joined the team less than a year ago says if it wasn't the event, they wouldn't have a chance to test their skills on the world stage.
Playing Kabaddi is really like a starting stage, so that we want to just go out for different events. We want to have more opportunity to play with another team and to know our opportunity in here and to want to improve our ability and
agility at its greatest. Muay Thai uses the entire body rotating the hip with each kick, punch, and block. It is not only fast, but its focus on working the core muscles sets it apart from other martial arts. And an athlete who wants to win a gold in her home ground says there's a sense of calm and respect despite the fierce nature of the sport.
We are not fighting with emotions. We go into the ring to show our spirit and mind. So when we are done fighting, we always show our respect and thanks for the fair play.
Besides the two, visitors can feast on a whole range of martial arts in Chungju this week. Some 3,000 masters of 20 martial arts from around the world, including wushu, taekyon, and horseback archery, are now here in South Korea for the 2019 Chungju World Martial Arts Masterships. The event is set to run until Friday, and it's an opportunity that can't be missed by martial arts lovers. 원정환, 아리랑 뉴스, 충주.
A steady stream of autumn rain is drenching the southern parts of the peninsula, which will eventually make its way across the rest of the nation this week.
For more details, let's turn to our Michelle Park at the Weather Center. Michelle.
Now, the southern provinces and Jeju Island are being soaked with rain that's pouring 30 millimeters per hour, and it doesn't seem to taper off anytime soon. In fact, a rain front is moving northwards, covering more regions by the country throughout the rest of our week. Now, until Tuesday, up to 120 millimeters of rain will fall along the southern coast, while Jeju and Jeollabuk-do and Gyeongsangbuk-do provinces will see a bit less, but still heavy amount of up to 60 millimeters. Now, going over to our readings, the nation will mostly wake up to 21 degrees Celsius, whereas Jeju is still experiencing tropical night, waking up to 25 degrees by tomorrow morning. If it's not raining, you'll be looking up to dark clouds into the afternoon. Seoul will be topping out to 29 degrees, while most of the southern regions are cooler in the mid-20s. Now, also by Friday, the 13th typhoon of the season, Lingling, will advance to the southwest sea of Jeju and keep moving towards the west sea of the Korean peninsula on Saturday. Now, as of now, the nation is expected to receive a rainstorm over the weekend, but we'll have to keep an eye on the typhoon's trajectory as it can make a detour. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That will do it for this edition of Arirang News. Thank you, as always, for watching.
News in Depth is next.